All right. With that, this is the city council or the work session for the city of Minnetrista on February 16th. It's Tuesday because of the holiday yesterday. First order, I'm going to do a roll call. So I'm Lisa Whalen. I'm the mayor and council members present. Ann McGregor.
Here.
Kathleen Refkin.
Here.
Pam Mortensen.
Here.
John Trumperlin.
Here.
Then staff present is Administrator Mike Baroni.
I'm here.
Is Superintendent Gary Peters with us?
He will not be in attendance, and neither will Chief Falls.
Okay, then we have Community Development Director David Abel.
I am here.
And Director of Administration Ali Palfos.
I'm here.
Our City Clerk Chris Lindquist.
I am here.
And I see that one of our engineers, Adam Gadbois with WSB, is also joining us.
Yep, here.
Thank you. Did I get everybody? I think so.
You did, Mayor. Yep.
All right, thank you. So we only have one item on our agenda for the work session, and that's continuation of our broadband discussion. Mr. Brony, you want to take it away?
Yeah, I think what I'll do, Mayor, is I'll just talk a little bit at the beginning here and then turn it over to Allie and let her essentially go through the memorandum that's in the packet so she can fill in some of the blanks on some of this stuff. So overall, I would say, Mayor and Council, I think we're still in our info gathering stage. As an example, we've got meetings scheduled last week and then also some upcoming this week with some of the vendors that you see listed on page 1. And we're still in the process of pinning down a meeting with Bob Vose from Kennedy and Graven. That's hopefully going to happen this week. It's not scheduled as of yet, but we're hopeful that we'll schedule that yet this week. So with that, like I said, I feel like we're still gathering a lot of data and trying to find out some things before we kind of bring some stuff forward to the council to react to. So with that, I'll let Allie kind of go through where we're at on each of the kind of headings in the staff report, and she can try to fill in some blanks and answer questions as we go. Allie?
Yeah, thank you, Mike, Mayor, and council members. As Mike said, I'll just kind of walk us through this briefly, and then we can discuss at the end. So just item by item here. Other providers, as Mike said, we're in the process of meeting with them. We have already met with a few of them, but we're waiting until we kind of have answers from all and can provide you with a compiled answer from each of these vendors. Who is available, who's not, and options moving forward. Am I echoing in anyone else's ear or just mine?
Just yours, I think.
Okay. All right. I'll keep going then. Franchise and pig fees. You guys wanted me to look into the pig fees and cable funds. As you know, franchise fees are collected from Mediacom and as a quarterly check, and they're placed into the cable fund. Pig fees amount to a small portion of the entire check, about 20% of the total franchise fees payment. Attachment A kind of displays the amounts collected in 2014. You'll notice there are no pig fees between 2014 and 2018. This was the repayment of that $50,000 grant from Mediacom. Currently, the city uses franchise fee revenue for ongoing costs for broadcasting city council meetings, equipment, and material. But unlike pig fees, the remainder amount, the franchise fees, can be used in any way that the city wishes, whether that be roads, whether that be broadband, whether that be buy a new police car. They can be spent in any way the city wishes. Mediacom future plans and possibilities. Currently, there are around 350 homes without service. Those homes span over 25 to 26 miles. To build out the rest of the city, I got a estimated quote that it would be approximately $75,000 per mile, which equates to a $2 million construction for that project. Obviously, these are really estimated. If we wanted to dig deeper, I would have Zach, our area director, pull actual areas to get us more close to actual cost. But MediaCom did say they would provide roughly 60% of that funding, and the city would be responsible for the remainder of the cost. We also discussed doing smaller projects. If we do a smaller projects at a time, MediaCom would cover a higher percentage of those funds. So the only for sure build out in 2021 outside of the areas of the deed grant is the Woodland Cove continued expansion. And there are also node segmentation projects for existing neighborhoods to improve service to them. Mike kind of touched on the compliance and comparing other, well, the compliance part. We are scheduling a meeting with Kennedy and Graven this week to kind of go over the compliance review. I've gathered all city agreements. I'm in the process of comparing Medina, Tonka Bay, Victoria, and Waconia. As you can imagine, that's a lot of information. So at this point, I'm just sifting through it and starting to organize. Communication to residents. I have updated our city webpage to better lay out how to contact providers, more information. I've also added an FAQ for new residents, current residents, older residents, that tries to touch on what the frequently asked questions are, such as I have them listed here. So hopefully this will address some of the questions that residents have. If they don't, my contact information is there, and so are all the providers. So hopefully that helps. I just began drafting the newsletter too, so I'll have a blurb about that in there as well. Mayor Whalen asked me to look into the COVID relief bill, which included $6.25 billion for state broadband deployment. The majority of these funds are not directly allocated to the state. As you can see in your attachment, they are allocated to help individuals pay their bill. 300 million of those funds are being distributed to some kind of grant program. I'm not sure what that is yet. But keep in mind, even 300 million distributed nationwide is approximately 6 million per state if it was distributed evenly. So even if we did get some funds, it would be, I imagine, a smaller amount. The final item, working together with surrounding cities. As you can see in the attachment C, it has all of the award winners. We are only 2 communities within the 7-county metro to receive funding. And I know we aren't the only underserved community outside of the metro. So Mike and I were discussing, and we think it would be beneficial for the mayor and city council to work cooperatively with other elected officials in neighboring communities that are also underserved. To do that, contacting county and state representatives to kind of build a coalition of sorts to maybe help move this along and get some attention from our representatives. And we included the names of those representatives in your summaries. So with that, I can answer any questions. That's about all we have for an update. It's ongoing. So yeah, I'm happy to answer anything.
Thank you, Allie.
And then Mayor and Council, before we dive into some Q&A here from you guys, I think I wanted just to expand on a couple of topics. I think one of the things that Allie mentioned was the only for sure scheduled work is the deed grant, and then the other items that I'm trying to find the exact phrase here, the node segmentation projects. Basically, that's an upgrade of existing hardware. It's like having, I don't know how old exactly Woodland Cove is. I think it's at least 10 years old. Some of the homes that were built in there initially, and those got cabled up right away with internet connections. But as you can imagine, in 10 years, that technology is kind of old, and there's been steady progress made in Woodland Cove and adding new units in that area and that development. So that's what the node segmentation projects mean. It's essentially upgrading hardware in already existing areas. And then as far as the information on the deed grant and kind of tying that together with maybe this council working together with other councils um, in efforts to try to work with our state representatives, and as we heard from our last meeting, even our Hennepin County representative. Um, as Ellie touched upon, there's 2 cities that got money in the 7-county metro, and if you look at the map and the dollar amounts, I mean, a majority of the money is not coming to the Twin Cities area. It's not coming here. It's going to all the outstate, and I guess that was the focus of their program, obviously. But one of the things as we're finding out, or they found out from us in a call last fall, is that even though we're in the metro, we don't really have internet connectivity like you would think most metro communities do. Living in Eden Prairie, I can tell you for a fact that my internet, even 15 miles just to the east, is way better than what we have here in Minnetrista. And I think that's just a function of the fact that we're on the edge of the metro area, and it just hasn't quite reached us as far as connections with broadband. So we're hoping that if the staff can put together a letter, we can supply that to the 5 of you on the council, and hopefully it'll meet your needs. We can tweak it based on your feedback, and that would be something that I could shop to neighboring city managers, city administrators, and see who, besides the city listed, maybe there's more that would like to see some more money from deed or wherever get funneled towards cities such as ours that are kind of on the edge of the metro, that are very similar to outstate cities but don't get funded anything like the outstate cities. So that's just the clarification I wanted to provide for council on that. And I guess with that, um, Mayor, if you want to kind of take it from here and kind of guide us through the Q&A part that we might get from you, and others on the council will be happy to try to answer those questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So I'll just start out with a question. Allie, you were talking about MediaCom, and that I believe in your packet, you said something about they would contribute 60% of the project.
Correct.
Okay, so have you had any kind of so you've had some discussion with them? I'm just going to use an example. Should the city decide, let's just say, to use some of our or all of our franchise fees, so we have 259,000 fund balance in our franchise fee. Should we decide to use that to expand or to continue broadband service, broadband extension from the point at, so now right now MediaCom is going to go up to Oxyoke Circle. So if the city said to MediaCom, would you be interested in partnering and continuing that, I'm assuming it's fiber optics, down 92, are you saying that they would be interested in participating at 60%?
Yes, correct. But those areas that were applied for on the grant were meant to be jumping off areas. So I believe they are planning to build out those areas regardless, and likely would at a higher percentage, if not 100%. So I wouldn't say, we'd automatically offer 40%. I think what we would do is look at the city at a bird's eye view, circle places that are poorly served, like up by Oxyoke Circle, but places that MediaCom isn't planning on already going. I do know they are planning to use the Northview Drive, the Oxyoke, and the Farm Hill as jumping off points for future expansion. So I think the city is, in my opinion, better spending its money on areas that MediaCom isn't already planning on going in the near future. But yes, they would contribute 60%, if not higher. I think that's on the low end. Zach from MediaCom did say they would, if it was done in smaller projects and not kind of all at once, they would contribute more, construction costs would be less, et cetera, et cetera. So yes.
Okay, because I think it might be worthwhile some discussion with them in terms of where they would consider expanding and how much they would consider participating, because my opinion, and I'll be quiet here in just a minute and let the council weigh in, but my opinion is if we have 259,000, nearly 260,000 sitting in our franchise fund balance, we should be using that somehow. And this seems like a totally appropriate way to use it, and a very good way to use it. So that's just my opinion. So I'll be quiet, and who would like to chime in here?
Hi, this is Dan. I'll start.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would definitely think that's a fantastic idea to use that money. And again, I had just gone through the 60-40 thing, so the city would need, it sounds like Ally thinks it could be done less than this, but the city would need 800,000. And we're back to how soon do we need to do this? And I believe the Star Tribune just had today an article that the Bloomington School District has decided to offer remote learning forever, possibly forever. So if other school districts start doing that too, this is going to be even more important to get everybody built out as fast as we can. So coming up with the other 500,000, I don't know how and where we would ever do that, but that's something we need to do. And then I agree with Mike and Ally about some form of lobbying to get more money from these grants.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I think a letter that we can distribute to all of the representatives. But besides that, Ally, I know you had listed like a few representatives, but also if other cities join us, it might expand the number or the representatives too at the state level, and also commissioners, because I know that Kevin Anderson represents our Minnetrista, but he wouldn't necessarily be representing, let's say, Minnetonka, or I'm thinking of Tonka Bay, for instance. I think I think that's a different area. So we might be able to expand the number of people that we can connect with. That's just another thought. Okay, anybody else?
This is John. I just have a couple clarification questions. Allie, in the memo, page 3 under the MediaCom future plans, we talked about the 300 to 350 homes over 25, 26 miles. Is that before the 80 that they now have the grant to do, or is that after the grant?
I want to say that is after the grant. I believe I spoke with Zach after we got word of that grant. So I could ask him for an exact number. I just, was getting an overview, but pre-80.
Okay. Well, I guess just so I have a perspective, obviously that drops the number down to 220 to 270, and although the mileage maybe still is a big issue more than the number of households, but I guess I'd just like that clarified, because it could change their dollar values as well, obviously, or would change.
Right. Yeah.
Secondly, Mike, just for my clarification, the cable fund has the 259,000 in it. Looking at the sheet that was attached, the attachment, is that all just franchise taxes, or do the PEG fees also roll in there, but they're somehow accounted for separately?
Good question. Go ahead, Allie. Take your stab at it.
Yeah, they're rolled into the same fund, but we have to spend them differently. They aren't earmarked differently. They're all in that lump sum of the 259, 288. But we can't spend them the same way as we can the other 80% of the fees. So if you were interested in spending some of the franchise fees, we would have to see what all of the expenditures have been and if they qualify as a PEG fee expenditure, and then subtract it from that.
So you're using in theory, though, every month or however often you're paying for these online meetings, council meetings, those we're actually using PEG fees to pay for, correct?
Correct. I would say nearly all of the costs that have been taken out of that cable fund can be qualified under the PEG fee. I haven't seen an itemized list, but I'm sure a lot of the costs can be earmarked for the PEG fee amount.
Okay, thanks.
And then
And one other thing, I agree too with obviously using this fund, which whoever we're dealing with or whatever plan we come up with, obviously the cable fund needs to be tapped, whether that's 100% or whatever we agree upon. Certainly need to use that. And one other thing I would bring up, if we're pursuing this with obviously sincere interest in arriving at a resolution to this, to serve our residents, to get everybody on board, we as a council, as a city, we may want to consider putting something into our future budget and putting another line item in there, something just like we do for the roads. We're taxing to help get our roads improved, then we may have to consider that and think about that as well. I don't know if that's for 2022 or what, but it's soon. That's what I got.
Yeah, John, the only thing you have to consider is, and obviously that's a bigger and broader discussion, which we can definitely have maybe during our budget discussions for 23. But I think my other question, and I wasn't sure what the answer would be, is how can we increase our franchise fees? You know, can we increase them by, let's say, $1 a month, let's just say, and what would that bring in? And so that might be something I'd like to have staff look into and bring back, because that might also give us an idea in terms of what we might have to work with in the future as well.
Okay. I do not know the answer to that off the top of my head, so I would have to look into
Yeah,
that.
I don't know if we can change that in midstream, or if we can change it annually, or if we have to wait until the contract expires. I don't know. So that would be, in terms of use of the franchise, the PEG fees, the PEG fees, I'm sure could even be used to expand broadband. It could, I mean, I'm not certain 100%, but the little bit that I've researched and looked into, it sounds like if we're expanding broadband to bring better internet service to our residents, that would be considered eligible under the PEG fees as well, because we're bringing them the opportunity to be able to be educated, if you will, and connect with City Hall. So that might be, I'm fairly certain that PEG fees can also be used for that. But if not, there's such a small amount, or they're a much smaller amount, that if they can't be used for that, it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mayor, I'm not exactly sure if the PEG fees can be used. My understanding was, and we actually expanded the use of our PEG fees. So we utilize it to pay for the conversion and documentation of these televised or these recorded council meetings. And when we're in council chambers, televised and recorded council meetings up to YouTube. We purchased the equipment that's in the council chambers and in the back room in order to do that. But the other thing we did not that long ago was to apportion a bit of the PEG fees in order to cover salaries for Allie's position, because of her job duties revolve around dealing with the cable franchise fee. And instead of having that money, all of her salary come out of general fund, we apportioned part of it to this cable fund because that's part of her job. So we have tried to utilize it, and I believe those are the areas versus just providing broadband. I think that's the other fee, the franchise fee. So, but we can certainly get a clarification on that.
Okay, great. That'd be great. Kathleen or Pam?
I I do have a couple questions, if you don't mind, Kathleen, if I go
No,
first.
go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. We were talking about the MediaCom, and I do like the way the conversations are going here. With MediaCom, you were talking about if we roll out, you know, a little bit longer, and what kind of time frame are they thinking of? Is this a rollout they're thinking of 3 years, 5 years? I'd be curious to say what they're thinking for timing.
I haven't had them look into that yet. I didn't know if the council had an appetite for doing a full MediaCom build out. They would have to evaluate the projects. I mean, I would imagine it wouldn't start anytime soon in 2021 as they have the other project going on, but I could definitely find out a timeline. Hypothetically, if they were to build out the rest of Minnetrista, how long are we looking at?
Okay, I think that's really important, because if they come back and say it's going to be 10 years, that would be ridiculous. And it would be maybe shift our priorities or what we're looking at differently.
So that's a very good question, Councilmember Mortensen. So, and that's kind of the question of the day when we're dealing with MediaCom. So we're currently under contract with them for roughly 2.5, 3 years to go here. And as the council recalls, there were 3 phases, and the first 2 phases had some definite timelines, where on the phase 3, which is the one we're in currently, didn't really have all that many measurables as far as how many homes and when they're going to deliver them. So whether or not it occurs during phase 3, I think will be part of our discussion with them at some point, but it also would be something we would bring up with Mr. Vose when we start talking about potentially renewing the franchise agreement. And you know, that's where I think if the current contract doesn't really specify, and it becomes more difficult to hold their feet to the fire, at least on the current contract, I think future contracts would be something that we would obviously have way more measurable deliverables on this kind of thing. And that's kind of how we've talked about this at the previous meetings, where we've talked about kind of a short-term plan and a long-term plan, whereas a future contract with MediaCom, because we're always going to have cable TV, which is the primary reason we have MediaCom here. But they're also in the broadband provider thing. There are other broadband providers, and that the short term would be working with some of those that are listed on the first page of the memorandum, whether it's Extra Time or somebody like that, to kind of help bridge that gap. So as everybody knows, our city is just going to continue to grow. We kind of have a good idea of where they're going to grow, but we know we're growing and have been in the last number of years, and will continue to do so. So I think there needs to be kind of that two-pronged long-range plan, short-range plan. And, you know, if MediaCom can't step to the plate during the current contract as we keep working on this, then I think, you know, we kind of flip the switch a little bit and try to figure out what we can do on a short-term basis with some of these other providers. And, you know, that would be to MediaCom's detriment. I'm sure they're going to want as much business as possible. But as we stated from the start, you know, they've got most of the densely populated areas of Minnetrista cabled up for TV and et cetera. And that's obviously where they can make the most money for the least amount of financial investment and infrastructure investment. We're talking about a lot of more of the rural areas where we need help. And so I guess we'll just see. But I think, you know, that's an important question. I agree with you. But we gotta find out what phase 3 of the current contract means to them, and what can we do going forward. So.
Well,
And when is that meeting going to be taking place?
Well, I don't know exactly when that's going to be taking place with them, but I think in order to have that meeting, I think this council should probably know and get a report from Mr. Vose once we hopefully get him on board for whatever fees they're going to charge. That's the purpose of the meeting that we're going to have, and find out what it's going to cost us to get him to do the review of the current contract, and figure out what are the measurables that MediaCom has done or not done, as the case may be, and what are our options going forward, whether it's this contract or a next contract. And once we have that, and some of the other vendors have been vetted, you know, I think we're going to be in a better position to decide that. But I think as we talk tonight, we don't have an answer for you on that. I just don't know.
Okay.
Well, Mike, kind of to piggyback on Pam's question in terms of timeline. So my thought was to make a contact, contact MediaCom and find out, not saying that we're going to commit to anything, but
Right.
find out from them, what if we were to piggyback on what they're going to be doing in 21? Forget about 22 or 24. I mean, that's
Sure.
still years away.
Right.
What would they be willing to do this year to continue their extension beyond what they currently have planned with the current grant? That's
Okay.
what I was trying to get at,
Yep.
is going beyond what they're doing in 21.
Right. And I understand the focus of the question is because they're planning that stuff now. And so if this council would be willing, or if it's a good idea, to throw some more money at this issue, to instead of having, I don't know, what's the number of homes we're cabling up here, Allie?
80.
80.
Maybe if 80 turns into 100 or 110, we kind of decrease that number of 350 homes that we don't have connected. So I
Right.
get that. Yeah, I understand the focus of your question. So,
Okay. All right.
and we could certainly research that with them. So,
Yeah, I think it's worth looking into,
yep,
definitely.
I
And
agree.
and the thing I'm thinking is too, we need to talk to them sooner than later. And again, I'm not saying we're committing to anything, but at least getting the information. And the reason is they're probably starting to gear up and make plans and get their
Right.
projects in order. And I would hate to miss that window of opportunity.
Yep, understood.
Okay.
And
Kathleen? Oh, Pam?
I did one real quick question. With the $259,000 that's in the cable fund, what is a good number to keep in that fund, like an ongoing? What do we need in there? Because we don't want to spend all of it right now on this. What do we need to keep in there?
Well, I did ask Brian that question this afternoon because I asked him, I said, is there a need? It wouldn't have to be a lot because we do get ongoing franchise fees as well. So again, maybe you don't want to spend all 260,000, but maybe you want to spend 225, whatever.
Right.
You might want to leave a little bit in there, but I don't think we need to leave a lot.
Okay.
Kathleen.
That's all I.
Okay.
I just have kind of more basic questions. Allie, have you reached out to Frontier? They weren't listed on the providers you contacted.
I have not reached out to Frontier. Their service doesn't seem to be meeting the needs of anybody currently, so they weren't at the top of my list. And they weren't discussed at last meeting. So no,
Okay.
I have not reached out to Frontier.
Can we add them? Because I've got them for fiber to the home and we've got good service. So, because we were one of the first ones in Woodland Cove before MediaCom was installing out here. So we kind of cornered Frontier into it. So I don't know if you can just add them just to see.
I think that's something we could probably add.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then with MediaCom, I saw what they were installing with the deed grant. I would assume they would put those same levels in, the 1 gigabyte download and the 50 megabytes upload with anything they install now. Do you know, or can you add that to your question for them? Just to confirm what they would install if we, piggyback off the current projects?
I think it would be the speed of the project. What was it? 100 down, 10 up or something? I'd have to look it up here. But it would be the same speeds as they applied for. Those same standards.
Okay.
Let me I can look it up here for you though.
Okay. And then
But Kathleen, that's a good question regarding Frontier. The only thing I would add is, Ally, if you check with Frontier, they would have to expand fiber optics. That's the only way
Right.
that they're
Yeah.
going to be
Not their
good.
DSL
Okay.
Yeah.
cable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
not the
Thank you.
fiber.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
The fiber that I have, not the bad stuff some of my neighbors have and hate.
Yeah, I have the bad system, and I can tell you, you do not want that.
Thank you for that clarification there.
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only other thing I want to make sure, I don't know, like when you talk to them, if when you find out where they're planning on going, just so we get it on a map for everyone just to look at and then see exactly where else we need coverage on the 300 homes that don't have it, just so there's something visual for us to look at.
Yes, you're talking expanding on the areas already in the grant.
Yeah.
I can
So-
definitely request those maps. They typically don't like them to be distributed to the public due to competition in the area. So I would have to ask Mediacom their regulations on distributing those maps of future build outs. But I can definitely request them. And I found it's 1 gigabyte download and 50 upload, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just make sure that that's what they would continue to put in new areas as well. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Okay, the only other thing I would say is when you contact MediaCom, I would let them know we're interested in partnering. Maybe even you want to dangle a carrot out there saying we're looking at a number of different options because maybe if they think there's some competition, they might be more readily apt to pounce or to chew. The thing is I know that David and myself and Mike and Allie, I can't remember who all was there, but anyhow, earlier last fall, we had a meeting with Extra Time. And so that might be another company, I don't know, that might, if we were to, again, say we would pay for a tower or something like that, again, to try and get them off the starting point and get them moving, that might be another option. Again, we could use these cable fees to pay for something like that.
Yes, and once I bring back, once we talk to all the providers, I'll kind of give an overview. I did reach out to Extra Time and they did give me some information. So hopefully by the next couple meetings, I will have talked to all of these providers and can, if we do pay for a tower, how many does that serve? How much does it cost? And get kind of more detailed information.
Okay, great.
Can I just add? Oh,
sure.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Pam.
Okay. I am getting some feedback from people regarding 5G towers. And I'm getting feedback telling me that they do not want one of those near their home. Have anyone else heard this?
No.
No.
You might want to do some research on it because there is a lot of concerns with health issues and things like that is what I'm gathering.
Yeah,
and if we're going to have problems finding a 5G tower location or several of them, that is going to be an issue.
No, I've heard those conversations out in the marketplace and in here. We've had a few people when we were building our water treatment plants, and one of the things we put on top of our plants is a connection to City Hall that deals with the SCADA system, and people were back then getting up in arms over 5G towers. I'm not actually sure how real the 5G, the boogeyman related to 5G and health issues is. So you hear that sometimes when they're putting in just regular power lines in areas. People get whacked out about that, and they feel like that's hurting the people that live near it. So I'm not exactly sure what the story is on 5G. I'm not a huge believer of that. But it's certainly something we can certainly talk about, because I think you're right, Pam. I think there are going to be some people that might object if we want to build a tower and they find out it's basically a 5G tower. I think you'll find out about that the hard way, maybe, if we don't kind of keep it in the front of our mind as we look into this stuff. So
Yeah. Well, regardless whether anyone believes in it or not, there are people that do, and
absolutely,
Yep. That's yeah. The other, just dropping just a real little note here. I know that County Road 92 is going to be resurfaced next summer. At least that's the plan. I don't know if that makes any difference to any cable work, if it's a pro or con or whatever, but I know that is slated for this coming summer.
Yeah, they're going to be doing a mill and overlay on it. That's a good question, a good point, Pam.
yeah, and as far as that goes, I don't know what the intentions are for digging trenches or putting in pipe next to that project, but I can certainly talk with either Adam or Allison sometime here in the next few days and have them inquire, since they're able to. They have the connections with people that are running this project. If it's a county road, it's going to be Hennepin County. So,
Right. Do they typically, maybe Adam knows this, do they typically put, I think this would go next or in the right of way in the ditch, right? It's not underneath the road.
Yeah, that's very typical. The thing we'd probably have to worry about would be just crossings if they do need to cross County Road 92,
Okay.
but they would typically directionally drill those so they don't cut into the pavement usually.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Yeah. All right. Good.
The only thing with that, Lisa, even if they don't have to drill into it, they might not be able to work on that road while the resurfacing is going on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I
So-
think we should, yeah, we'll have to talk. I mean, again, maybe Adam or WSB will be in contact with MediaCom as well as with Hennepin County, just to kind of make sure that they're both talking to each other.
Yeah, the private utility company would need to obtain a Hennepin County work and right-of-way permit, and the technicians at Hennepin County would review their proposed schedule and timeline and make sure it's coordinated with their mill and overlay. So they would already be required to be in communication on that, the two entities there.
Okay.
Okay.
And then also, Allie, when you connect with MediaCom, could you find out a timeline for when they plan on doing the deed grant project that they're going to be doing in Minnetrista?
Yes, I'll ask for a more detailed timeline. They give me a start date and an end date, but no real tangible dates in between. So I can definitely see if they have a timeline themselves for starting and ending construction here.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have comments or questions? Anne, any more?
Yeah, I have, I have a question. Allie, you said something about what's going to be covered in the deed. Are endpoints for MediaCom?
Jumping off points for future build out. They strategically chose areas that would be easy to expand on.
Because I was wondering, okay, because I was wondering if we are going to look at surrounding areas, if MediaCom has other projects ongoing in those other cities, maybe some of these I don't know the right language. Some of these nodes or whatever that they were building off of would lower the cost. That was something I thought you were kind of inferring when you were talking about it.
I would imagine so. Just because these areas are much denser, I would imagine we would end up contributing less as we. How should I phrase this? Sorry, I'm trying to think. So if we want to expand on an area that's already built and the area the city wants to contribute to is more dense, the city will ultimately contribute less money because it's less construction. There's less square miles in between nodes. So yes, it would be less expensive, I would imagine, for the city, but I don't know the exact cost for sure.
Okay, good, and very well put.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? John, Kathleen, Pam? Okay, so staff, Allie and or Mike, can you maybe just tell us what's going to happen in the next couple weeks and what you're going to bring back?
I'll go first. Allie can basically add in to this. So, as Councilmember Refkin said, we're going to throw Frontier into the mix. So we have a few other meetings to deal with on that list of vendors that you saw. So we'll be doing that. We do have to work on a discussion and meeting with Bob Bose from Kennedy and Graven and kind of find out more about this contract, how Mediacom has or hasn't met the final phase, as well as probably the previous two phases of their 10-year contract requirements that we have in there. Potentially what other cities have in their contracts and how they've done meeting those requirements in those cities. And the reason I bring that up is because I know every city's kind of different and unique as far as topography and all sorts of things, but I'd like to make sure that we're not getting any less of work from Mediacom compared to our neighboring cities. And then probably kind of a game plan summary of going forward on the political angle of this with the neighboring cities with a letter. We'll hopefully be working on that before the next time we meet. And then hopefully wrapping up kind of our data collection phase of this and then start talking turkey about what do you want to do, and here's the money we think we have available, and here's the strategies we could implement, and whether that's a long-term thing or a short-term thing. I think that's kind of where we're going to be at our next meeting. So.
Okay, and then also contacting Mediacom just to see if there's any interest in partnering.
Yeah,
I
we'll
was
certainly do that.
I was gonna rattle off my list here too, in addition to Mike's. I will see what the possibilities are of increasing the franchise fees. I'm not sure if that's possible, but I will check. I'll get clarification on if the PEG fee portion of the franchise fee can be used for build out specifically. I'll look at a detailed timeline for the deed project. I will inquire with Mediacom, let them know we're somewhat interested and get some more details on one, either piggybacking on the deed program or expanding into areas without service or out projected service. See if the speeds will be the same as the project. Look into County Road 92 resurfacing, how that affects broadband, and I think that's what I have so far.
And then the 5G health issues. So
5G health issues, yes. Frontier fiber to the home as well.
right. So
Am I missing anything?
And then this is more long-term. Yeah, you do. Okay, one more thing. This is a little more long-term, but nonetheless important too, because obviously this isn't going to get done in 1 year. But so coming up, I know that there's different numbers that are being thrown around at the state capitol for 22 and 23, or is it 23, 24? Anyhow, the next budget biennium, and there's numbers of 30,000 or 60,000 or 120,000. So in your letter that we write, I think we need to say if everybody's on board with this, we highly support a certain, the higher amount, whatever that is. I thought it was like, there's one proposal that was 120 million, and then which would be 60 million per year. And then the other one was a 30 million or 60 million. So that would only be 30 million a year. So my question is, do we want to support the higher amount, that giving us more opportunity? I don't know. I would think if there's more money available, that there'd be more opportunities for us and people like communities like us to get more funding.
Right.
Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Sounds like a good idea. I don't know enough. I don't know enough to know what it would take to do it.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know. Well, like I said, if we just say, we support higher or the 120, whatever the amount is, somehow wording it, we want to be somewhat loose, or we don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but just say, we really support broadband grants. And I don't know if they can write it into the law, but it certainly would be nice if they could somehow add in some language that would say that, even because right now, like Mike pointed out, the rural areas are being considered far more than we are in the metro area. So if there's, or even if there's special funding for unserved or underserved communities in the metro area, if something like that would be floated, I don't know. But yeah, just some thoughts maybe put it in a letter and we can look at it and then refine it, I guess, as we think about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mayor Whalen, your points are well taken. What I didn't understand, and what's rolling around in my head as you're saying this, I didn't understand why MediaCom told us to go in for a lesser amount on the grant because we'd be more assured of getting it. And then how does that focus in on what you're saying?
Wait, say that again. MediaCom going in for what?
Yeah, MediaCom, Allie, you'll have to chip in here because I'm only going to do this in pieces. Basically, MediaCom had said something to the effect that they wanted us to apply for a lower amount because we were more assured on getting the grant. No one remembers that?
Yes, so I think, Anne, where you're going with this is even if we have more money, how are we going to apply for more money when MediaCom doesn't think we'd get awarded the grant? Is that kind of where you're going with this?
Yes, that's where I'm going with that. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Why do they
I don't
think
know
we
the
won't?
answer, but I know what you're asking.
Why would they think we're not going to get it? I guess that's the question.
Well, I
Well,
think the
MediaCom's,
answer lies in that map when you see two cities
yes.
in the 7-county metro. So,
And keep in mind, as we get more providers and get more households served, we will only become more served, not more underserved. So as
Right.
build out continues, our chance of getting the grant goes down. Just to keep that in mind.
Sure.
So
And here's the thing that I don't quite understand is there's some communities that got over $1 million, and here we are, we're getting under 200,000. So, what if, so is it that MediaCom doesn't want to put out the money, maybe? So they're saying we're only going to put out, 400,000 or 200,000 this year.
that could
If
be
they had,
possible.
I would think that's the reason why, because otherwise, why wouldn't they just go full bore and say,
Shoot for
hey,
the moon.
yeah, I don't
Yeah, I
know.
imagine they don't want to match a $4 million project with $2 million. And we don't
Right.
have, you know,
I mean,
it spans over too many miles. It would be terribly expensive for them. I'd imagine. I don't know that answer, but
yeah, I mean, that's a good speculation, but that's certainly something we can run by MediaCom and see if they can provide an answer for us on that.
Yeah. I think that's a good question. Okay. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I think you've got some work cut out for you as a staff. So, if nobody else has any questions, that's the only thing on our work session. And if again, as council, if you have questions or think of something between now and our next broadband work session, call Allie, call Mike, ask them. It never hurts to get more information or to get more
yes,
answers
please do.
answered.
Yeah, we're more than happy if you come up with something we haven't thought of, especially let us know.
Yeah. And then Allie, just kudos to you. Thank you. I think the Q&A thing on the website, that's really good.
Oh, great. I'm glad you like it.
So Yeah, good job there. So thanks for doing that. Hopefully it will help. But all right, that's it then. Is there a motion to adjourn?
This is Kathleen. I'll motion.
Thank you, Kathleen. And is there a second?
I'll second. It's Pam.
All right, Pam. So Kathleen made that motion and Pam seconded it. And with that, all those in favor will signify with aye. I vote aye. Lisa Whalen. Ann McGregor.
Aye.
Kathleen.
Aye.
Pam Mortensen.
Aye.
John Chumperland.
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned and we will be back at 7 o'clock. Have a good break.